Hey, everybody. Welcome to RiverCity-Media. This is Beyond the Booth. I'm the Howard Chaney along with Phil Harris. Everybody knows Phil. He's on here every week. And Phil, how's everything going? Was you able to stay dry today?
Yeah, for the most part. Had a little rain this morning, but it wasn't too bad this afternoon. Got
Awesome.
off
Awesome.
halfway decent in the decent time to get here anyway.
Right. And our guest tonight is Coach Johnny Johnson. And I've got a question that I'll come back to the coach part. But anyway, Coach Johnny Johnson of the James Clemens baseball team that will be traveling Friday night to play down in Tuscaloosa. Is that correct, Coach?
Yes, sir. Tuscaloosa County, well, Northport, but Tuscaloosa County High School.
And unfortunately, having to travel Friday because coming up second in the area. But something we was talking about before we went live was with you being 7A, you are less teams. So this is your first round playoff game
Yes,
when
yes.
everybody else has already played one.
That's right. We've got our regular season lasts 1 week longer because we have only 32 teams in our 7A classification. So we start a week later, and so where everybody's had a round already, we're just getting started this week.
So I know in football, and Phil is WQSB, and they do the playoffs and all that. And I know in football that they go ahead and start their playoffs week 11, 12 technically if you count week 0, but we won't get into that. That's a whole different story. But they have a week off before they play the finals.
They do.
Would you like baseball to do that, to continue going and not have the week off at the first? Or do you like the way it's set up?
No, I think with baseball, it is what it needs to be. Just because you get in a rhythm of the season and guys are getting regular at bats and, practice is going a certain way. And if you had a whole extra week off with no games to play, that is an eternity in baseball because we're used to playing 4 games a week. And so if you went a whole extra week with no games, because right now, and even in the playoffs, you're going from Friday to Friday with nothing. I would be very against having that off week at the end, especially heading into a state championship where you want to keep some momentum going.
Absolutely. And the question I was going to ask you as I was introducing you, and all of a sudden it came to me, and it's came to me on several baseball coaches that we've had on here. Professionals call their coaches / managers. Why does high school teams not say the manager?
I don't know because I did a summer of pro ball as a pitching coach, and if you'd have called our manager coach something, they would have hated it. Like that was just a no. You do not call them coach. And of course, you're dealing with grown men and professionals, but I don't know why that's different here. We're not a manager; we're just the head coach. Because there's plenty of managing being done, even at our level. When you talk about all the different hats we wear as head coach that aren't even baseball related sometimes, so it'd make more sense to be the manager, I guess.
So I'll ask a couple more questions, turn it over to Phil. And are you what do they call it? Statistics analytical top coach or manager, or do you just go by gut?
I think I fall in between. I believe in a lot of the stuff we make our decisions on is numbers based, and I think some of the ways we play defensively and some of the stuff we do offensively is definitely numbers based. But I'm not so sold out to the sabermetric stuff that a lot of guys are. I just think high school is a totally different deal. A lot of guys will take these sabermetrics that you see with the major leagues about, not putting bunts down or not stealing bases and the percentage that you score from second with 1 out versus. We play a different game than the big league guys do. Our guys don't play catch well sometimes, and so I think you got to put pressure on 14 to 18-year-old young men to make decisions quickly. So we play a high pressure type of baseball that includes bunt game and steals, which would go against a lot of sabermetricians, the numbers guys. So certain decisions we do, but certain decisions I'm old school. Like I said this the other day, I'm like the '80s Cardinals, man. I want Vince Coleman and guys like that to steal bases and put pressure on people, and I think that plays at our level, and we've had some success doing it.
And the last question I'll ask for now and turn it over to Phil is, are you one of these coaches that gets completely in the baseball uniform when you're out there coaching, or do you just what do you?
Oh, I'm in full uni. Yeah, I got a jersey and everything, and I'm old school that way a little more than some. Even I like at practice today, I had pants on, and so that's just something I was raised in. You know, at our level, you still have to wear a uniform. You don't have an option during the games. You have to at least have a pair of pants on and a pullover to be out on the bases. And so I'm a little bit old school that way. And not every day at practice, but quite a few. I'll be in practice gear just like everybody else. And there's some tradition to it, I guess. You know, people say that all the time. Why are we the only sport that the coaches get in uniform? And it's a little strange, but it's just kind of the tradition and showing some respect to the game, I guess.
You know, I'd hate to see Tom Landry out there dressed in pads and a helmet and all that doing some coaching back in the day.
That's right. He had to have his fedora, man. His suit and fedora.
Absolutely. Phil, ask Coach / Manager Johnson some questions.
All right. Hey, let's go back. I want to talk a little bit about your family first. Of course, your wife,
Okay.
Jerry, she's from Dutch. So she's, you know, from this area where we are now. I guess y'all get back here a lot during maybe holiday times, but for the most part, you stay over where you're at. And you've got a son, JT. Is it John Thomas? Ain't that his name?
It's John Thomas, with everybody, you know, his age, and he's kind of morphed into JT over the years, for sure.
Well, tell us about your wife. I know most every coach, you know, the wife's the important part. She's the keg that makes everything go, and I'm sure it's not any different for her her. Tell us about her. Tell us about JT. Just tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, like most coaches' families that succeed, and I would say ours is succeeding, they are some of the most selfless people that I know. And you talk about support, and you know what we do takes up a ton of time. It takes up a ton of energy and focus, and you know we worry about other people's kids more than our own sometimes. And you know, just Jerry has been outstanding. You know, she keeps things together, like you said, and you know, being from Duck Springs, you're right. She's from that area, so we get back over there quite a bit. And now JT is at Snead State Community College playing baseball there. So, you know, she gets to spend more time in Boaz, Alabama than I do, just because we're playing right now. But spend a lot of time over in that area. And of course, we spent 14 years at Fort Payne, so you know, love that area. But she. I couldn't ask for a better partner in this adventure that we're on. And JT, too, being a coach's son is not always easy, especially when you play that sport. And so that was not always the easiest thing. But he battled through, and we you know made a good run last year during his senior year to the semifinals. And now he's living the dream, trying to chase that dream of college baseball. So, you know, I got a great family and love them for sure.
Well, tell me this: if Jerry has a choice and she's on the fence, and it's a game that involves you or a game that involves him, which one's she going to choose?
Oh, she's going to see JT all day long. There's no, I mean, that's not even a question. I know where I stand on that totem pole. I'm at the bottom. But no, she and it's happened some this year. You know, we play a lot on the same days during the spring, and you know, there's whether I got a Thursday or a Saturday game, and he's got conference games going on. And look, let's be real. He redshirted this year at Snead. He had a knee surgery right before the season, ended up taking a red shirt. She's still going to his games over mine on Saturdays. So, so baby boy takes precedent. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah, that's just the way life works. Because that's blood for her, and you know, blood's thicker than water, so to speak. I guess you could say.
That's no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Coach, I was going to, I about lost track of thought, but I want to go back to the times when you were. Of course, I want to ask you this: is how did you and Jerry meet? How did y'all come about to meet?
Oh man, I was at this is a crazy story. I was at the National Coaches Convention in Nashville when I was coaching in college. I was at University of Texas Pan American, and I met her in Nashville one night, and she had told me she was in the book. You know, I flew out the next morning. She left with her friends. I asked her to dance downtown Nashville. And so I flew out the next morning, and I ended up calling her. And, you know, it was one of those things where just conversation takes off. Back in the day, there wasn't Zoom. There wasn't any of this stuff. There wasn't FaceTime. I mean, it was racking up, you know, cell phone minutes after 7 o'clock. So it was free, if you remember those days, you know. And She flew out, I guess that we met in January, and sometime in late February, 1st of March, she flew out and watched us play at TCU, and then ended up coming down to Pan Am and watched. We had a tournament going on with Penn State and Illinois and a bunch of them, and she came and visited, and it just took off. And we were engaged by May and married in December that same year, and never lived in the same state.
Yeah,
believe that.
Amazing. Ain't that amazing?
I think this December will be. Let me do my math right, so I don't get in trouble. This December will be 24 years.
So I guess I'm going to say that links you to this area, and that's probably part of the reason you ended up in Northeast Alabama.
Absolutely. We got married, and she came to Texas for about 2.5 years while I was still coaching in college. And that summer we were engaged. I was doing the pro ball stuff, and I was ready for a change. There had been a coaching change, and I was just looking to do something different, and had applied at some other colleges, applied at some high schools, and actually found the Fort Payne job on the AHSA website, and applied. And, I'd been to Fort Payne one time during a Christmas break trip here and went hunting up at Little River Canyon with my in-laws. And so I'm like, well, I remember that town. It was a neat little town, one school system, a single school system. So people get behind us, that in the community. And I thought, well, we'll give it a shot and be here, 2 or 3 years and move on. And 14 years later, I finally left. So,
hey, that's a great story. We'll get back to that a little bit later, but I want to go back to when you were in Arlington. Of course, one of the biggest stories I read about you kind of sort of start where your kind of claim to fame come is one time you were a bat boy for the Texas Rangers.
I was, yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, we had a man at our church that was a front office guy with the Rangers, and I grew up in Arlington, which, grew up less than 5 minutes from the ballpark. And he actually got me an interview to be a bat boy. I had to go interview and do all that stuff, and got the job and did it for 2 seasons. And what a great experience. If you're a kid that loves baseball, to be able to go in and have a locker in the clubhouse with those guys and being there and shagging BP and, playing catch and doing all those things. I mean, I'd have done it for free. We got paid, but I'd have done it for free. And so I got to do it for 2 years and was lucky enough that I was there with some really good players. It was Nolan Ryan's last 2 seasons. Pudge Rodriguez was a catcher, had Canseco on that team, Paul Marrow, Julio Franco. We had some really good players at that time, at least hitters. We didn't pitch it real great at times, so they didn't win a ton, but it was some exciting baseball. Juan Gonzalez, he had home run king 2 years while I was there. So it was fun for sure.
Now, did you say what age you was, or did I over?
I was 16 and 17. So it was the summer after my sophomore and junior years in high school were the 2 years I did. So 1992 and 93. So you had to be old enough to drive because, we stayed till sometimes 2 a.m, cleaning shoes and doing stuff after ball games. And so you had to be able to drive yourself home. So that was part of the deal. You had to be 16.
Did you get to form a lot of relationships with those guys?
Some of them more than others. Yeah, players, and some of them treated you really good and would be personable and talk to you. Some of them were kind of in their own world, and so you had a little bit of both. But the big deal was just for a kid my age, it kind of set the tone that I may not be a big league player at some point, but that's where I fell in love with the coaching side and knew I wanted to stay in baseball, was just being around the game, watching the coaches teach and listening to those guys. And, that was really where I fell in love with the idea of coaching baseball.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that. Of course, you got to tell us a story about the night that Robin Ventura decided he wanted a little piece of Nolan Ryan, and you were right there and got to see that. Describe it for us. I got to see it on TV, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, but describe that night for us.
Well, I was lucky enough to be there for sure. And, I was actually running balls that night from the on-deck circle to the umpire. And so my dad always jokes that I'm the one that started the fight because I provided the baseball. But so we're sitting on the on-deck circle and of course, what happens. And, the big melee starts, and I told y'all off the air before, one of the most impressive deals was Bo Jackson. He was with the White Sox after hip surgery, and he was just manhandling guys and moving them around. And we actually moved over to the top step of the dugout and sat on the Gatorade coolers and just kept watching. it'd slow down and it'd break back out. And they finally got things calmed down. We go back to our bench. We had little stools on the on-deck circle. And George Bush, the future president, was the owner at the time. And one of my favorite parts of the story is he leans over to us and he's like, "Did y'all get their bat boy?" Asked us if we'd gotten their bat boy. So we laughed about that and said, "No, sir, I want to keep my job." So it was a great memory for a young man who loves baseball to be able to tell that story this many years later. It was a great time.
Well, what I wonder is who ended up with the baseball that hit Robin Ventura. I think that would have been a nice one to have and had Nolan Ryan sign it for you.
Oh yeah, if you could have proven that was the ball with his signature, yeah, that thing would be worth a lot of money these days.
Yeah, because I mean that thing, it's still remembered. People still talks about it still today.
Oh, every year on social media, on the anniversary, every year it gets posted over and over again. It's never going to go away.
Well, one good thing about now I read where when you were bat boy, you ended up with a scholarship, what they called the Major League Clubhouse Manager Scholarship in 1994. So that helped you towards school also.
Absolutely. And I was actually the first recipient that ever got it. They just started that. We had to write like an essay and put in an application, and it was for bat boys across the league, and the clubhouse managers actually voted on it. And I was the first ever recipient, and it was just a small scholarship, but at least it was something to help with school. And actually on the 5th anniversary of that, they did a flyer promoting it and put my picture of me. I was coaching by then in college. And so I actually got to do a little promotional deal for that on the 5-year anniversary, and had a picture of my college and what I'd done since they gave me the scholarship. So it was a neat deal, and I was very appreciative of that and the time I spent with the Rangers.
Of course, you went on, and of course you played at Texas Pan American, was a great high school pitcher. But when after you finished playing, you went into actually into coaching at the college level. Did you ever think you was going to leave the college level? Was you planning to make that a career if it became possible?
Well, I actually didn't play at Pan Am. I played at a school, St. Mary's University in San Antonio, and played there and got to go to a couple NAI World Series. And my first job was at Texas Wesleyan. A coach from St. Mary's assistant coach had gotten the head job at Texas Wesleyan. And he knew I wanted to coach and reached out and said, "Hey, I've got a spot and we'll pay for the rest of your school to finish your undergrad and do all that." I was still not finished with school. And man, I jumped all over the opportunity because I knew I wasn't going to play long-term baseball, and I wanted to coach at the college level. So went into college thinking I was never going to leave college baseball, and did that for 7 years between there and Texas Pan American. Spent 5 years down there, and then did the summer of pro ball. And I was never going to leave higher baseball. I didn't even get a teaching degree. I got my master's, but I didn't get a teaching degree. And what is that they say? Make plans and God will laugh. Things changed, and next thing you know, I'm looking for high school jobs, and I end up in Fort Payne.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, tell us about your time in Fort Payne. Of course, kind of what drug you here was getting married to Jerry, but you spent 14 seasons at Fort Payne. Tell us about some of the memories in Fort Payne. Some of the people you developed great relationships with, and even talk about some of the players you had that really stick out.
Well, Fort Payne was a learning process for me. It was my first head coaching job. I took that job thinking that, I was this college and professional coach, and I was going to walk into this high school and just fix it immediately, and they hadn't had a whole lot of success in recent history when I took the job. And I just didn't realize what kind of project it was really going to be. And, my first 3 years, we went 8 wins, 7 wins, 5 wins. And I thought, man, what have I done? What's not working? But that third year, we didn't have a senior on the team in 2000. That would have been 2007. Didn't have a senior, but we were really young and talented. They just didn't know how to win. And, you had guys like Slade Smith and Kyle Crabtree and Kyle Conkle. And, you had all these young players, Nick Johnson, and just good athletes, but didn't know how to win baseball games. And I had to figure out how to adjust who I was I was really, really hard. I treated them like college kids, and I had to learn to kind of come to the middle a little bit. They had to learn to work because I expected them to work differently. I was the first one and maybe ever that wasn't a football coach. I just did baseball. And Ronnie Crabtree hired me and I was so appreciative that he gave me the freedom to be the baseball coach and just be a baseball coach. And that's uncommon at a somewhat smaller school in Alabama. And so Ronnie had a vision of this could be better. And it helped that I'm sure his son was a seventh grader when I was sixth grader when I got there, or whatever. But he knew there was some talent coming. And so we did that, that next year. We went from 5 wins to 20 wins in 2008. And then we kind of reeled off about 6 or 8 years where it was a lot of fun. We won 4 area championships, set the school record for wins about 3 different times, and had some really good players, like you said, that came through.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I wonder if, Coach, if you think that over time, North Alabama, especially Northeast Alabama, there's not been a huge emphasis on baseball. It's always been football. Basketball has kind of taken hold, but now it seems like more coaches and more schools are committed to baseball now. So I think we're getting better in North Alabama from a baseball standpoint than we have ever been because, it seems like kids and coaches take it a lot more serious rather than just be like you talked about, the football coach coaching baseball.
No, there's no doubt about that. And I think you just look at the process we went through in Fort Payne. When I got there, we played at that same place they're at now, but it was a city park with just chain link fences. And, it was kind of run down because the city didn't use it a whole lot because they were not really hosting that age group of kids anymore. And the school didn't own the facility yet. So they didn't really take care of it a lot. And the football, it was and those guys were great guys that were the coaches before me, but they were football guys. And so we did a lot that first year of my first deal. I knew we were going to not be real good, but we were going to have a nice field to play on, and we we're going to have some decent uniforms and look the part anyway. And that was the first 2 things we did was fix the field and buy some uniforms. And then we figured out how to play. But we built the indoor facility, we put in the backstop, and we did all these things just on our own. And then it's like, once you start to build stuff, people start to believe and you start to win a few games. And you look at what they've done at that place now. The school system finally stepped in and turfed it and put the new lights and did all these things. And you look at places like Plainview up at the complex there and in Fort Payne, they've gone in and turfed all that stuff for softball and baseball. And, Northeast has come in your area now and they got softball going on at the junior college there. And, in our area over here is just exploded baseball wise. When you talk about, the Bob Jones, James Clemens, Sparkman, Huntsville, Grissom, Madison Academy, like the level of baseball that's getting played in this greater Huntsville area is it's really good baseball and getting more and more competitive with some of the Southern and some of the teams down in that Birmingham area.
Yeah, over here, Coach, Mr. Cunningham and now Mr. Jett both really put a lot, they've put a lot into baseball, but they've put in a lot into a lot of sports. Now, to me, and I'm sure you feel this way, athletics is an investment now. You've got to keep these kids interested in playing because if you don't have good things for them, they're not going to play. So, therefore, you're going to have to pump the money into it so that you can get something in return. But when you give these kids nice places to play and fans and great places to go watch games, it really makes a difference.
Well, and I think, the point that a lot of people miss when it comes to athletics is, a lot of people that aren't athletic minded don't understand the money that's spent on athletics and facilities. And the deal is, it's not only the face of your community most of the time. Like when people drive in to James Clemens, they can see, especially from Burgering side, first thing they see is the baseball field. When you go at Fort Payne and you're going from the high school up to the middle school, you drive right between the football stadium and the baseball field. That's kind of the face of your place. And the other thing is kids that are involved in extracurricular activities, in specifically sports for me, make better grades. There are less discipline problems. That's what builds that community within your school is kids that are involved in stuff. And it is documented time and time again that kids that are athletes on the whole make better grades and are less discipline problems than kids that aren't involved. And so
Yeah.
I think the pouring money into athletics is not just about athletics. It's about the health of your community when it comes to your school.
Well, and nowadays, and it's kind of a stereotype, but a lot of schools are judged by their athletic programs.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's out of control too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, some of the things we expect, like if you come and see what we've got right here at James Clemens, or even what Fort Payne has now over there, it's really a little bit out of control. Like, my son went to junior college, and it's a toss up or not whether we've got better facilities or not. And he's at Snead's got great facilities. They've done a heck of a job there and built a lot. But there's a lot of colleges that don't have what a lot of these high schools have. And so these kids are spoiled rotten. They really are. And so I don't think they realize it till they get out of here, how good they really have it and what these communities have put into these places.
Well, and a perfect example of that, and you talked about that, Northeast College with their new softball complex. There's Division I schools that don't have what Northeast has.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've just seen the renderings of it, but I can imagine it's first class by everything I've seen.
Well, Coach, let's talk about your baseball team. I think you were 24-11, ranked in the top 10 most of the year. Of course, it came down to the series with Bob Jones at the end of the year. Y'all lost 3 pretty close baseball games, or you could, you had a shot at winning the area. I was noticing, looking through your schedule, and I talk about this a lot. Y'all have a lot of close games, and of course, I'm sure the big part about being in 7A is arms, very important. Pitching's very important. Early in the season, it seems like, the pitchers are ahead. Then weather starts warming up. The hitters catch up. And, and you start seeing these 8-6 and 7-5 games where you were seeing 4-3s earlier in the year. But when you get back to playoff time, I think a lot of times it goes back to being pitcher dominant.
Well, I think you're right. I think early in the season, definitely pitchers are ahead. There's not many kids that want to go to the plate with that metal bat in their hand when playing 45-degree weather. The pitcher has an advantage, and you hadn't seen a lot of pitches, and but when you get to playoff time, you're seeing everybody's best arms. You're not seeing the 4th or 5th guy, as a starter. You're seeing that 3rd and 4th guy out of the bullpen because you're 1 and 2s on the mound for the games that matter, and so you see those tight, low-scoring ball games a lot of times come playoff time, especially the deeper you go. And so I think a lot of it has to do with just the level of arm that you're seeing come playoff time. And that's why those scores go back down.
Yeah, definitely. So, it just seems like it's that way. But I just, like you talked about, I just think baseball has gotten so much better in North Alabama. And I think a lot of, to me, what helps playoffs is when we went to this best of 3 series, because I can remember in days back, probably before you were at Fort Payne, a lot of times Fort Payne would have a good baseball team, but they'd run into a live arm that was really good in a 1-game series, like from Hearts or Etowah. They were just as good as those teams were, but they didn't quite have that ace pitcher. And in a 1-game series, if you've got a great pitcher, you can move on easily.
Yeah, I think that was a big change, and it happened right before I got to town, to Fort Payne. That's true. And the same thing happened in Texas. You had a choice of 1 game versus 3, depending on who you were playing, and sometimes it'd go to a coin flip between the coaches to decide which was which. But if you got those 1-game series and you had that one guy, you had a chance to make a deep run. Now you get to find out who's really got a better team because you're playing the 2 out of 3. And so I think that's ideal. I wish the AHSAA would fix area play. We still only play a 2-game series that matter. I wish they'd at least stretch that to 3 games that go towards our area standings to get into the playoffs. I think that would be a big fix, because right now our season comes down to 4 to 6 games, depending on the size of your area. So you play 30 to 40 games, and only 4 to 6 matter to get you into the playoffs. I think that's crazy. So we should at least count all 3 games of area play. And I'd really like to see the discussion about region play come in, where we'd be in regions and you'd have 7 teams, that you're playing against. And then
I think that's coming. I think it really will come, because it will help with scheduling too. Because when you run into things like, and this is just an example, Outer girls basketball, they are so good nobody wants to play them. But if you're in a region, then teams are forced to play them. And I'd kind of like to see that, kind of like the way they do in college. You play your area games at the end and play them toward the weekends, just like you would playoff. That way everybody kind of, maybe play one midweek game and then play your area over the weekend and play the area games that way. And then you're kind of sort of prepared for the playoff atmosphere.
We've actually done that over here. Our area is Friday, Saturdays. So we usually play a Monday or Tuesday midweek game, and then we play a Friday night and 2 on Saturday. For that very reason, for a number of reasons. One, it sets up more like the playoffs. You're playing that 3 games in 2 days. And the other thing is, who wants to play an area game and then go to school the next day? Like, I can't for the life of me, if whether you win or whether you get upset, like, I don't want to lose a Tuesday. When we played Tuesday, Thursday the whole time I was in Fort Payne, and we played Tuesday, Thursday when I first got here. And, if you lose that tough game on Tuesday night to an area opponent, Wednesday's not a whole lot of fun at school. And, I'm not, it's hard to get motivated to teach. It's hard for those kids to get motivated to go to class. And, the fans can come out on a Friday and Saturday and not worry about having to go to school the next day as well. It's just such a better setup for many reasons. And I would like to see everybody move to that. And we got to be flexible. Sometimes there's a prom on a Saturday, so we play a Thursday, Friday. We actually play our last series against Bob Jones every year, and we play it Thursday, Saturday, because Friday night is the start of 1 through 6A playoffs. And so we wouldn't have any good umpires on a Friday night because they're all doing playoff games. So we play that last series every year in our area, Thursday, Saturday, because of that. So you got to have some flexibility. But I think, like you said, pushing it to the weekend, making it like a playoff atmosphere, more like a Friday night football game where people want to come to the game on Friday night, and do those things. It's been much better for us doing it that way since we switched off the midweek.
Let's talk about your team. I think you were about 23-11 this year. Talk about the ups and downs, kind of sort of recap the season.
I think right now we ended at 24-13 after this weekend. It's been a roller coaster. Look, we are young, like extremely young for a 7A school. I think we typically have 2 seniors in our lineup on most nights, and only have 7 senior players. It's a small class anyway, and a couple of those are pitchers, and I've got a couple hurt, and so there's 2 seniors in the lineup, and I've got a freshman in the lineup every day. I've got at least 2 sophomores, if not a third, in the lineup every day. So, competing at the 7A level, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. We started off 4-5, and really we're making some bad mistakes, did not hit it all. Talking about not hitting early in the season, we didn't hit it all. And so we were losing 1-0, 3-2, 2-1. And then we got on a roll where we went, I think, 20-5 over the next 25 games. And that's just a tribute to them growing up, playing better baseball. And then the last area play, the last couple of weeks, we got a little sloppy again and dropped one to Austin, we shouldn't have lost. And then had the tough series against Bob Jones, who's extremely good every year. They are really talented, but we lose an extra inning games in game 1. And then in game 3, they hit a walk-off home run to beat us. So it was a tough series. And so they're learning. That's the best way to put it. They're learning. And it's exciting because almost all of them are back for next year. If you don't want to look too far ahead, but the fact that they've grown this much and we're in a position to go into the playoffs and hopefully have a good run with this younger group is a tribute to the work they've put in and my coaches have put in.
Of course, I guess you knew probably early in the year you were going to struggle like this, but that's what makes it great for a coach is at some point the light's going to come on.
Yeah, especially like you said, as young as we were. And then look, 2 of our arms were hurt to start the year, 2 of our main arms. And, they had both come back, and the other one's down again. One of my seniors, poor Cody Hodges, he's down, but he's still going to go to college to play. So I'm happy for him. But so we went through some injury stuff too, and they've been a resilient bunch, and they've been open to learning and adjusting and doing those things. And as long as they're open to adjusting and willing to work and don't get discouraged when it's tough, that's our job as coaches really, is to teach them how to deal with that failure and not get discouraged and continue to try to get better and want that fifth at bat after they've been out 4 times. And, so trying to get a young group to understand that has been a challenge at times, and understand that we can't always do it like we've done it. Like there's better ways, and we got to work and adjust. And, it's been fun to watch them grow up, and I hope we're hitting our stride at the right time. We've had a great week of practice, and we'll go down to Tuscaloosa County and see how we do.
Yeah, of course, and a lot of times too, Coach, of course, like if you've got a veteran team, you're mostly player driven. And then a lot of times when you got a young team, it's a little bit more coach driven until these young men understand and get their role. And then they mature and be good ball players.
Absolutely. Last year we had 16 seniors on that semifinal team, and you just let them play most of the time. They knew the system. They knew what we wanted from them. They were bought in, and you just turned them loose and played and just, directed them a time or two. This year we really had to coach. Hard. And from the day we got back in August, we've had to coach hard. And, there's, like I said, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and you hope that it pays off not only on this playoff run, but going forward, because you're going to have so many of them back.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Coach, I know that probably maybe a lot of parents or a lot of fans listening. Talk about some of the guys on the baseball team, as many as you can remember anyway.
You talking about James Clemens?
No, your guys,
yeah, right
your
now,
players individually.
Well,
they love to hear their names. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been a good year. The only 2 returning guys that played full time last year is Matthew Drinkwater, who's a pitcher and infielder for us. He was a sophomore last year, now a junior, and a guy named Jesse Isensee. He's our starting shortstop and also pitches. And both of those guys were full-time starters by the end of last year as sophomores. And played a big role in that group. But outside of that, they're the only 2 back that were full-time starters. And so, Hudson Smith behind the plate is also a sophomore this year. He's played a little bit as a freshman as our backup catcher, and he actually played in a playoff game last year for us as a freshman, and he's had a huge year for us. We knew he was going to be athletic and good behind the plate, but didn't know how much he'd hit, and he's our leading hitter right now and done a really good job. So he's been great. We've got a big first baseman, Trip Morgan. He's going to get a chance to play in college. He's one of my 2 seniors that's in the lineup with Ian Berry. Ian's been our DH and played some left field. Had Bryson Hodge, our right fielder, is a freshman, just a phenomenal, talented kid that's learning how to play at this level. Jumping from 8th grade baseball to varsity is a big deal at the 7A level. And so he's adjusted well. Will Congo, our center fielder, another sophomore, highly talented young man who's learning to play the game, be a 2-way guy for us down the road as a pitcher and outfielder. And the other one that I haven't mentioned yet is Udovich, Hayden Udovich, our second baseman. Again, guy that's very extremely talented as a second baseman, junior, but really has had a huge year for us offensively, which we didn't know we'd get out of him. So, another guy that's really been a plus and an X factor for us, that's helped us get to this point that we weren't sure what we'd get offensively. And so they've been good. And, guys like Braden Palace on the mound that moved in this year, of course, Drinkwater and Isensee, Will Voterbeck, Tyler Lewis, a junior left-handed pitcher, has put in some big innings for us. And I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Scotty Seja, one of my other senior pitchers, going to Huntington College next year. I think I've thrown out most of the names. I've missed a few. I'm sure somebody will probably text me and go, "Why didn't you mention me?" But no, I'm just kidding. But it's just a good. Hey, and I'll tell you this about our kids: it's a great group of kids. I don't have off the field problems. I will tonight, now that I've said that. But we don't have off the field problems. They take care of their grades. It's just like these parents have done a great job of raising these young men, and it's fun to come to work every day and be around these guys.
Well, tell me this. You don't have to name them. Tell me, besides JT, who are some of the guys you have playing at the next level?
Oh man, just at Snead, JT, Satchel Wheeler, and Mason Bush are all at Snead together. I had Hayden Markford is down at Marion and having a really good year. One of my outfielders from last year. You have Luke Davenport. Luke is at UNA as a pitcher, and he's thrown against LSU and started against Alabama over at Toyota Field early in the year and Ole Miss. So he's had some big innings for them as a freshman and doing really well at UNA. Wallace State, they're a year older, but Andrew Lawrence and Colton Patton, catcher and shortstop over there. And so we've got a bunch. We've got a kid at Samford, Noah Berry pitches at Samford. So we've sent a lot of kids out over the last 3 or 4 years. And so there's a bunch of them out playing. Carson Luzier is over at Calhoun. So like I said, we've got probably 8 or 9 guys still out playing right now.
Do a lot of these guys still keep in touch with you?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously the 3 at Snead I get to see from time to time. And but like the 2 guys that are a year older than them that are at Wallace, I still text with them and talk to them about how recruiting's going because, they're both looking to make a move to a 4-year school. And, and the beauty of what we've got going on here. And we talk about this. We started this probably around 2001, I guess, coming out of COVID, was this county line culture. Because our school sits on county line. And so we started this thing, county line culture. And we've got, the values that go with that and what it means. And we've defined all that and, just built something, special when it comes to the culture here. And those guys are still coming back to our games. I'll look up and, I've got 3 guys from last year's team in my dugout. And I'm like, where did they come from? They love to be around the guys. They love what we're doing and we love them. And it's just really been a special little run here since we got here and kind of built that county line mentality and that county line culture. And it's fun to see those guys come back and visit and want to visit and get to hug their necks and tell them you love them,
Yeah, I guess that part of the county line culture, I guess you sit down with them or a coaching staff sits down with them and finds out what their short-term goals are, what their long-term goals are, and things like that to really get to know these young men.
You do. And look, we spend more time with them than their parents do. I mean, You think about the number of hours from the time we get back in August. If they're not playing multiple sports, especially, we're with them 5 days a week for 9 months. And so we spend a ton of time with these kids. And I'm not going to lie and say that I know all of them exactly the same because you don't. You build relationships just like anything else, but you try to get to know them. And our number one job as coaches, figure out what makes those kids tick. Like the lie of treat them all the same is as false as it ever gets because you can't treat them all the same. Like the reality is what makes Howie tick. I may be able to get on Howie and really ride him, but Phil, I may have to love on more and trying to figure out that about your kids and what's going to motivate them and what's going to, ignite their fire. You got to get to know them a little bit to figure those things out.
Me and Phil pretty well then, don't you?
Oh, so I can get on Howie and I got to love on Phil. That's the truth. Okay.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's one of those things. I remember when I played for Jim Kirby.
I saw that Bear Bryant picture.
I never got chewed out, but all he had to do was kind of grab me by the shoulder pad and tell me what actually he expected, what he wanted, and I just responded to it. The yelling part really didn't work that well, but all he had to do was just tell me, and he could be firm. I wouldn't soul up and be mad or anything like that. Well, Coach, tell me this. I know winning is important, but I guess what makes you keep coming back for more and more in each year is that relationship with these kids because, it's something special about seeing these kids when that light comes on, when they become great football or great baseball players, but also start thriving in academics and then off the field.
Well, I think that's the truth. Like, look, I love to win and I hate to lose. I mean, I do. And, but if I walked away from it today, it's not winning and losing I would miss. It would be relationships and the time you spend with coaches, the time you spend with these players. I mean, those relationships are that's what you, even as not being a player anymore, the first time you step away from being a player, the clubhouse, the bus rides, that's the stuff you miss. I love playing. I love competing, but I can find other things to compete in. But that the camaraderie and those relationships, are things that you can't get back. And we try to reiterate that as much as we can. Like, you're not going to remember who got 3 hits today and who struck out 3 times. You're going to remember, did you win with your teammates and compete? Did you do what you could to get better? Like, what was the relation? How did you treat each other today? Those are the things that you'll remember. When you win a championship, you don't care who got the game-winning hit, who pitched 2 innings, who pitched none. You just know you were part of a championship team. I got to go to 2 World Series as a player. You know how many innings I pitched at the World Series? 0. But I still was part of 2 World Series teams, and the camaraderie with those teams. We still get on text threads and, Zoom during COVID was awful, but for some things it was good. It reunited our college team via the Zoom, that nobody knew about, but you got to catch up with guys. And now we're all back in touch with each other. And, those relationships keep you coming back. There's no doubt about that.
I know exactly that you didn't say you'd miss the umpires.
Yeah. You know what? This is funny. I really get along with umpires pretty good now. Now, if you ask some of those DeKalb County guys how I was when I first got to Fort Payne, I was hard to handle. I think I was good for an ejection a year. And when they finally started taking $300 out of my wallet for ejections, I calmed down a little bit. But we still get good laughs. Guys like Randy Schrader and some of those guys, Larry Bradford and Russ Dearman, and some of those guys I used to ride over there in Fort Payne. We get good laughs about it now. Matter of fact, there's a guy named Dale Gaddis that one of the games I got thrown out. We're playing Plainview, and he throws me out of the game. It was the last time, well, no, second to last time I got thrown out in Fort Payne, but the first time I got fined. And I had said some pretty unnice things to him. And we're here at James Clemens earlier in the spring, I guess, and I'm over there working on the field. I guess it was during the fall. And this guy walks up the fence. He's like, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I'm like, "No, sir, should I?" Because he's a little gray. And it was Dale Gaddis, the guy that had thrown me out of that game years ago. And he popped off and made a joke about what I'd said to him, and we laughed. And so as hard as I was on those guys, I think they knew it was business. And I show up the next day with a smile on my face. But I've learned to mellow out in my older age. And I really have a great relationship with those guys, even over here.
Well, did you have some good one-liners for umpires?
I'm not like Ron Polk. Ron Polk was famous for that stuff. And I'm not as good. I think I handle myself better now, and I can get my point across without showing my tail. And I've learned things that work better than just screaming all the time. How to handle some things, get my point across. So I think my relationship's better with them, and they listen better now because I don't do that.
Yeah, it is beneficial. If they like you, it's beneficial naturally.
Now they know that. Now they know if I get upset that I'm really serious. Something went bad. Like because I
they mean
he's that mad. Something must be bad. Plus having cameras helps now. We got cameras everywhere, so you catch it on film.
Oh yeah. If you pitch much of a fit, it's going to be you don't want to go by the pitcher's mound and get on the ground and crawl and do all the things we've seen in the past, throw bombs and all those things. Yeah, there's been some antics in the past. Well, Coach, I want to ask you about this, and I'll turn you over to Howie. Tuscaloosa County, you're going to be traveling down to Northport, taking on them in the first round of 7A playoffs. Tell us what we're going to see out of them. And do you think pitching-wise you've got good arms to get it through a 3-game series with them?
Oh, I think so. Look, they're talented. I mean, obviously they kind of maybe didn't shock themselves, but I think to the outside world by beating Thompson and winning that area, because Thompson's a perennial winner and got 2 big arms that are up to like 94, and so they came in there and took care of business, and so, but they did it by just being a good baseball team. They've got some depth on the mound. They've got 4 to 5 guys that are really pretty good high school pitchers, and some that are going to be college guys. But they don't have the big arm that's going to show you 94. They've got guys that are, a couple righties that'll be 87, 88ish at times. They got a couple lefties that are going to be in that low to mid 80s, and can pitch. pitch. And so we're going to have to do a great job, offensively of competing against some guys that are just good pitchers. And, they're not like a Bob Jones has been in the past that had a bunch of power guys that you had to really be scary offensively. They're more like us. They're going to be scrappy baseball players, and they've got one or two you got to be careful with, but they're just going to play solid baseball. And so you hope you go down there and we're two teams that are similar and we just play great baseball, and whatever happens, happens. But, I think we have a lot of similarities between the two programs.
Yeah. So in other words, you go limit mistakes and you feel like you got a pretty good shot.
Yeah, and I don't have any of those guys either. I don't have any huge. I got one guy with some thump in the lineup, and the rest of us are just scrappers. And I've got some arms that'll compete on the mound, but aren't going to be overpowering, but they can pitch. And so I just think there's a lot of similarities in the two programs right now, and it ought to be a good series.
Well, what is the strong suit of your baseball team?
Traditionally we've pitched it really well. And again, I don't know that we've had any overpowering arms, but Coach TJ Orr is my associate head coach. He has done a phenomenal job over the years here. He's a former head coach. We met back when he was the head coach at Hazel Green and would come to Fort Payne to play. And actually met in Florida one time. We all both went to Florida and played somebody from North Alabama, but he's done a phenomenal job with our pitching staff and brought on a young guy named Connor Brooks that pitched at UAH. And as a matter of fact, Connor is the son of Richie Brooks, who's a Fort Payne graduate and a Hall of Fame coach down at Benjamin Russell now. But he's got Fort Payne ties. His daddy was a coach. I guess Connor's granddad was a coach at Fort Payne years ago as well. So, but Connor's brought some energy and some different perspective to the young, technologically savvy side of pitching, and those guys have really got our guys going. And TJ's more of a throwback. He just really teaches guys to pitch, how to get outs, how to sequence pitches, and attack a strike zone. And so traditionally we pitch it really well. And then you're going to see pressure baseball from us. We're going to steal bases. We're going to lay down bunts. We're, like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm going to make 14 to 18-year-olds make decisions and make them quickly. And I think sometimes that plays to your advantage, right? Sometimes they panic or they don't make decisions quickly or they throw something away. And we've lived on that and sometimes got more out of our guys when we don't have extreme talent because we're willing to play that way.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Coach, one more thing, and then I'll let Howie turn over to you. You've got a youth baseball camp that comes up, in June? You want to talk a little bit about that in case some folks might be interested in coming to your camp? Oh,
yes. And look, I will give all the praise to Coach Brett Burgess. Brett is the Cherokee County guy from center. He's one of my assistants and does our hitting. And you talk about a guy that does a phenomenal job with youth camp, and he does it every summer. It's County Line Baseball or County Line Youth Camp. I believe it's on Facebook. We do a 3-day camp here in the summer, and he's got upwards of 100 kids, and we've got spread out. Our complex here at James Clemens, there's 2 baseball and 2 softball fields on campus, and we're spread out on those baseball fields, and I think even some of the softball fields, and he does a phenomenal job getting those the kids where they need to be, being organized, having prizes and feeding them. And last year he had Sprocket here from the Trash Pandas opening, high-fiving kids as they were coming in, the mascot, and, just really thinks of everything and has this thing safe where they check in and check out. And then, not only our coaches, our players are here. Some of our former players come back from college and they work it, and we really do a good job of instructing those kids and having fun. Yeah, sounds good. Well, Howie, it's up to you now.
Coach, you mentioned a couple umpires that I've known for years. One of them has been my neighbor ever since I was born, Randy Schrader, and I know how easygoing he is, so I'm pretty sure he never threw you out. If he did,
no,
you had to say the magic words for him.
No, funny thing though, I was talking about that deal with Dale Gaddis. I'd actually gone after Randy when that whole thing started that night. But so I'd actually gone after Randy, and Dale came to rescue him and got the worst of it, I guess. But Randy, what a great guy Randy is. Just, you know what I appreciate about Randy? I always appreciated if he messed something up, he was just going to tell you, Coach, I just messed that up. He's just going to tell you. And then it just diffused the situation. Like, you can't keep arguing because he's like, Coach, it's over, but I screwed that up. I'm sorry. And it would kind of diffuse the situation. And I always loved him for that. And Randy's another guy just loves the game.
Hey, he would always come up to you with that little smile on his face saying, Coach, I'm sorry. I messed it up.
Oh, yeah. It was funny. We went to play Scottsboro on an opening night a couple years ago, and I had Larry and Randy at that game. And we had tried to steal home, and the guy balked bad. Should have given us the run, but we get thrown out at home to end the inning. And so I'm talking with both of them between innings. They're like, Randy's like, yeah, I think I missed it. I'm like, well, no big deal. We're up 4-0, whatever. Well, sure enough, they come back to tie it 4-4 in the seventh, and it's like 32 degrees out at this point. It's opening day. And I get back over there around first base, and I look at Randy. I said, two things. Number one, if you'd have called that balk, we'd be going home right now. And I said, and number two, if this had been about 06, I'd have been eating your soul. So we had a laugh about it. And then we end up losing in extra innings on opening day. But so we had a laugh about that. Randy's one of the good ones, man. No doubt.
The other one you mentioned I've known for 30 years or more is Russ Dearman. And he's another one that if he threw you out, you had to say something magical.
No, Russ was going to come hang out and talk with us in the office, during the off days. And, as we got to know Russ, and of course, he's had some health issues and not calling anymore. But you talk about just a friendly guy. He's a quartet singer, right? I mean, he does a lot of. And so him and Larry, you don't know Larry Bradford, but we took a trip up to Cooperstown with our 12-year-olds right before I left Fort Payne. It was the summer before I came here. And on that trip to Cooperstown, they ask you to bring 2 umpires, and they get to stay free of charge at the cabins there at Cooperstown. I mean, it's a big deal, and they feed them and do all that stuff. And so I knew that Russ was a huge historian, loved baseball cards and all that stuff. And I called him and said, hey, man, have you ever been to Cooperstown? He's like, no, I want to go. I'm like, I got a way you can go for free if you want to go. You just got to get yourself there. So he said, well, let me call you back. He calls me and said, hey, do you think Larry could go too? So Russ and Larry went with us to Cooperstown and stayed on site. And then they ended up actually going back, I think, 3 or 4 more weeks over the next 2 years, because it's all summer long. And you go for a week, and they got 72 teams in every week, And so I think Larry and Russ ended up going back 2 or 3 times up there to Cooperstown to umpire and hang out during the summers.
That's awesome. Like you said, Russ is a huge baseball card collector. I saw him just the other day. Well, not just baseball, but all sports cards. But I saw him just probably about a month ago, ran into him, and he had just bought some more cards. He said, I like to stay and talk, but I got to go. I got to meet another guy in Scottsboro, go buy some more cards. So,
well, didn't he have a fire a while back and lost some stuff too? Didn't he have a house fire or something and lost some of the really great stuff that he had? And but again, just a good human being, like Randy and like Larry, just some really good guys in that area.
Absolutely. We got some comments. I showed them a little bit earlier, but we'll show them again. And some of these guys you may know. Tim Ledford, great coach right there. Good seeing you, Johnny.
Oh, yeah, the Ledfords were good people. They had all their boys came through right after I left. They were just getting into the program. Of course, he's got one there now still. And I had them all in elementary PE. I did elementary PE for 14 years at Wills Valley. And so I had all their kiddos come through, and they were always good. He was a baseball. He loved it. Now, I think he's umpiring now. As a matter of fact, I think he's doing some umpiring. But he coached a little travel team that was right behind my son's age a couple of years, and had a lot of success doing that. So they were good. The Ledfords were good people.
A gentleman by the name of Casey Gaddis says, great coach.
So Casey is the head coach at Eider, which I think they won the area this year and got into the playoffs. And, he was a young guy when I was about to leave, and he just called me up, didn't know him at all, and was like, hey, can I come down and just talk baseball with you? And so he came down to the indoor facility there at Fort Payne that we had built, and we just talked baseball. And now he's I'm the chairman of the board of our state coaches association, and Casey has gotten hugely involved with that. He's on our district committee, and is just another good human being from that DeKalb County area, and just really loves those kids and loves to learn baseball and give back. And he's doing a tremendous job over there at Eider.
Have you saw him?
We had him on at one time.
Yeah, have you saw
a couple of weeks ago? Yeah.
Have you saw Casey lately?
Just online. He's lost some weight, it looked like.
Well, he lost a lot of hair.
He had that big old beard. And maybe that's why he looked like he lost weight. I saw a picture the other day I don't know if it was Easter or what, but it looked like that beard was gone.
Yeah, he
Phil, tell
lost
the
it.
story real quick.
Yeah, he lost it. He made a bet with his team. He said, if we win the area, he goes, I'll take a shave job, shave his beard
Really?
and head and everything. So they won the area. So during baseball practice, they come up there with the clippers and whatnot and cleaned him out. So
That is
he has a new look.
outstanding. Hey,
Yeah.
he looks good too. I think
Yeah,
he
I
looks
asked
good
him, I said,
without it.
now if y'all go through and win the state championship, what are you going to do? He goes, oh Lord, I don't know if I can give any more or not.
Well, I just noticed that picture the other day, and I guess that's what it was that beard was gone. He looked good.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of the gentlemen, like Phil said, we had him on just a couple of weeks ago. Coach, let's get to know Coach a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm the guy that Phil asked baseball don't really have X and O's, but he asked questions like that, and then I come in and kind of get to know the coach a little bit on a little more personal side, and so I got a few questions I'll ask if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right, great. And the one I'll start off with all the time, and Coach, this gentleman, Coach Steve Sparks, he was on the show not long ago, and I always ask about superstitions. He said, no superstitions, routines. So, with you being a baseball guy, and baseball players are notorious about superstitions / routines, is there any that you do before you take the field?
I really don't. I have, I guess, like you say, certain way I like to do things as far as I fill out this lineup card first, and then I, do my dugout card or whatever. There's certain like routines I get into, but as far as it being like superstitious, like if I don't do it this way, we might lose. I don't really have any of those. I'm not like Wade Boggs having to eat, chicken before the game, or, put on the same pair of socks if we won, or, I really don't do that. I do like routine. I do like some comfort in that, and making sure things stay on time. And I do certain things on certain parts of the day, but nothing crazy. No.
Music wise, what do you like to listen to?
I will listen to a little bit of everything. I do like some classic rock and some heavier metal, and I'll listen to just about anything. But if I had to pick one, I am an old school country. Like I'm back like Willie and Waylon, that 70s, 80s, and even back to even like some old Ernest Tubb and old school stuff. And so if I had to not listen to anything else but one genre, it'd be old school country.
Come on now, keep it talking.
Yeah, no doubt. You give me some Don Williams playing or something like that, I can sit here all night.
Yeah, Coach Chase Willingham from Sylvania says, "What's up, guys?" I don't know if you know Coach Willingham. He's one of the up and coming coaches here in DeKalb County as well.
He was a Plainview guy, right? And
yes.
Went to JSU, and so I know Chase. His wife was a Fort Payne girl.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Food wise, what's your favorite food, or where do you like to eat at?
It's hard to beat a good ribeye. But if I had to, choose one type of food, I could eat Mexican food every day. Like, I guess that's the South Texas coming out in me. I think I could eat Mexican food, chips and salsa, and I like more authentic stuff. Like, I'll go to the taco truck at the end of the street down here and wear it out, not necessarily go into some chain or whatever. Like we've got a little gas station that's been converted into a little taqueria and store that we go to on Sundays sometimes. So I could eat Mexican food all day long.
You sound like my wife. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about last year's team. You not saying that you didn't coach as much, but it was more of a, as Phil would say, a player-driven team compared to this year. Which way do you prefer? A more of a player-driven team, or this year's team where you're having to kind of assert yourself a little more?
Well, I don't know that it's one I prefer. I mean, obviously you want things to be player-driven. You want them to be so bought in and them know what's going on to the point where you're not the one having to do it. Like, I feel like if you're always the one having to drive the energy, if you're the one always having to drive the culture, you're not the best you can be. And that's not, I don't think that's what's happening here this year. I think we've had to coach this year because they're young and they just don't know. And they're starting to figure it out. Whereas last year they had been here for 4 years and knew. Plus, it was my son's group, and they'd been around me a lot more than most groups, even away from the field. So, obviously, when it's player driven, it's better. But I don't know that I prefer. I think you just have to adjust to whatever the needs are.
Got another comment from an individual I know, Mike Carpenter.
Oh, Mike.
Hey, Coach, good luck in the playoffs.
Yeah, what a great family. So Austin was one of those guys I should have mentioned back there when we were talking about Fort Payne. Austin pitched and played third for us and some first and is now coaching. He's down at Marbury coaching down there. His brother is over at Scottsboro. Alex was a young player when I left Fort Payne. He was in our middle school program. But both those boys played in our program and love that family. Get to see Austin's another one. He helps us in the summers with our all-star event we put on with our coaches association. And so it's funny. Well, I saw his brother this year at Scottsboro. And so we called Austin was Carp for Carpenter. Well, his brother was like our little bat boy at the time when he was younger. And his brother was Carp, so I had him a jersey made and put Trout on the back of it because I had to think of another fish. So I still call his Alex Trout to this day. So I had Carp and Trout.
That's awesome. A great family there that you're talking about. I've known them for quite a while. Seems like we know a lot of the same people, Coach.
Well, we in that area, man. Like I said, 14 years, you get to know a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, we appreciate you coming on. Kept you a little bit longer than we anticipated, but thanks for spending the time with us. You got the game coming up Friday night. Give everybody the rundown as far as what time the first pitch is and everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This has been fun. And, you move on from an area and you don't always get to go back and reminisce and talk about things like that. And, we had a lot of good times in Fort Payne and built something I thought we could be proud of over those 14 years. And so I appreciate you guys having me on and let me reminisce about some of that and talk about the new. And so we'll go down to Tuscaloosa County Friday, and first pitch for game one is at 5, and then we'll play right after that at 7:30. I think it's listed at 7. And so, if we split and need another game, it'll be Saturday at 1.
What time will y'all leave Friday to get down there?
We'll leave that morning at 9 or 10. We'll go down. I think we got plans to go to Shelton State and do some working out there once we get off the bus, just to get off the bus and move around and hit and take some ground balls and do those things. And then we'll eat and go to the hotel and then go over to the game. So it'll be a day.
Find you a little Mexican restaurant down there.
I'm not going to feed those boys Mexican before we play. That'd be bad news. They may be spending time more on the bench and running to the restroom than playing balls. Yeah. So we probably won't do that.
But Coach, we appreciate your time. And before we get going, we always allow our guests to give a shout out to whoever they want to. So have at it.
Oh, I get to shout out to anybody I want to, huh?
Anybody you want to. Maybe the missus.
No. Oh, my missus.
Yes.
Well, we got to talk about her, Jerry. She knows I love her. She's one of a kind. So, I think we talked about relationships a lot in this whole thing. And there's a guy that has run our state coaches association for decades now, a guy named Barry Dean. He's our executive director, and he is retiring from that position in the end of July. And you talk about a guy that has loved on the game of baseball in this state, its coaches, its players, and influence that he's had on many. So I just want to shout out to Barry for everything he's done for this state, for their players, for their coaches. And I think all the coaches that you've had on that are baseball coaches have probably come in contact with Barry in one way or another. And so I just appreciate all he's done and will continue to do, even in an advisory role. And, he's been a great ambassador for the game of baseball in Alabama for a long, long time.
And you brought something up. I know I said that was going to be the last thing, but I do have.
Oh, you're good. We can go all night, man.
You didn't mention your assistant coaches. Could you give them their props real quick?
Oh, yeah. You got TJ Orr, who I mentioned, who's my associate head coach and handles our pitching. Brett Burgess, who I mentioned from Cherokee County and played at Snead and then at Georgia Southwestern, does a great job. He's our hit. He coordinates all our hitting. Justin Lynch. Justin's come over. He was from Scottsboro graduate. Does a great job. He's my JV head coach and handles that. Connor Brooks, I mentioned him shortly. He's a new on the staff this year and doing a phenomenal job helping TJ with our pitching. We've got Jody Dodd, who's new this year, came over from Buckhorn. He handles my freshman team. And then a guy named Reese Hartung, who's been with me since I got here, community coach, he's been, I guess you don't have an ex-Marine. He's just a Marine, right? He's just not active. I learned that the hard way. I called him ex-Marine one day. He said, no, we're never ex. We're Marines. So, but Reese handles all our catching and helps Jody with the freshman bunch. And, phenomenal men when it comes to how we act, how we go about our business, not only just, you said X's and O's baseball, but just that county line culture. They are bought in, and you would be proud to have your sons play for this group of men for sure.
Awesome, Coach. Best of luck on Friday night. Please come back and join us sometime.
Anytime, guys. I enjoyed it. And Phil, I appreciate you reaching out, and Howie,
yes,
kind of hosting this deal. And anytime you want to get together, you just let me know.
Awesome.
I do want to ask you one question. It sounds like you enjoy what you do and enjoy these relationships with the kids. Do you see yourself coaching baseball for a lot more years?
I do. I don't. This is year 21 in Alabama and 28 overall. I've got 4 more years till I can hit retirement anyway in the state. So I'm at least going to be doing it that long. And as long as I'm enjoying it and can put the energy into it deserves, and I don't feel burdened or burnt out by doing it, it helps to have good assistants, especially at a school this size. And as long as I got some young assistants that can do some of the heavy lifting as I get older, I can't imagine doing anything else in the near future anyway.
Well, I imagine a big important thing, and if you want to talk about your administration, your administrative staff, they are important when it comes to baseball programs.
Oh my gosh. And look, and it's funny you mentioned that. So my principal, if you get online and see anything, Dr. Kerry Donaldson, he is phenomenal. He actually came in my classroom first block today and did an interview with me in class for Instagram. And so he just sat down and just talked with me. We had one of the students film it, and he is about promoting our people. And his word is synergy. Like we all are one working together, and our staff, whether it's him or Miss Flanagan, who is one of our assistant principals, and Miss Miller, McCants, like they get along so well, and it rubs off on the rest of the crew, right? Like they get along well, their synergy is good, and therefore the whole school kind of operates that way. There's not a bunch of bitterness and backstabbing and all those things that you get some places, because everybody just treats each other nice and gets along. And if there's a problem, okay, let's figure it out and fix it. And, they get out of your way and let you teach. They get out of your way and let you run a baseball program. And if there's a problem, we'll handle it. And, couldn't ask. I said this today, this is the best place I've ever worked. We've had some good years in Fort Payne. We had some good years at Pan Am and in Texas Westland and all those things. But this is by far, as administrative, the resources, kids, this place is top notch, and it starts at the top for sure.
Awesome, Coach. We appreciate your time, and seemed like you just interviewed all day long.
Well, yeah, it's been one of those days, right here before the playoffs, right? Everybody's fired up, I guess. But I enjoy talking ball and talking life, and so I appreciate you having me.
We appreciate you joining us, and like I said, we hope to have you back again. Maybe after you bring home the Blue State map.
Man, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
put that right up there somewhere, right?
Yeah, we'll call it a day. Yeah, we'll call it a day when that happens.
That's right.
Yeah, be expecting a text from Phil trying to hammer down when we can get you back on here.
That's right. Well, I do a podcast too. You're going to have to tune in. We actually do one called the JC Wingmen, and it's myself, our head softball coach, Bradley Kimbrew, and a guy named Kirk Pierce. We do the Friday night football broadcast. We do play-by-play and color and all that stuff. And then we started a JC Wingmen podcast, and we do it once a week during the football season. Did it, I think, 15 straight weeks during the fall. And we've done like just 3 during the spring, just as kind of update what's going on from walk-ons here in town. We go to walk-ons, set up, and have dinner over there than get on and do about an hour and a half podcast or, like this. And we have a great time doing that thing. So you have to tune in and check us out on the PAS Plus app. There we go. I did my plug there.
That sounds good.
Awesome, Coach. Well, best of luck Friday night. And if we can do anything to help you out, be sure to let us know.
I appreciate it. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks a lot. So for the Howard Cheney and Phil Harris, our special guest tonight was James Clemens, manager of the baseball team, Coach Johnny Johnson. I'm sorry, I had to say Coach to end it.
I like it.
So good night and God bless everybody.